If you'd like to follow along, you can turn to Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24. A few weeks ago, we started discussing some of the resurrection appearances. And so as we have a chance to remember Jesus, we're going to remember the specific resurrection appearances. And the thread that is going to go through all of these is this idea that Jesus knew exactly what each person needed at each resurrection appearance. And Jesus still knows what we need today. So it's one of the amazing things about gathering together for the Lord's Supper is that He's able to provide each one of us what we need in this particular moment. And next week when we come together, we might need something different. And Jesus is able to use this time to provide us what we'll need next week. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we go through the thoughts of these resurrection appearance to these two disciples walking on the road to Emmaus. So the first thing we have to do is sort of put ourselves in the situation. These guys are distraught. Jesus has been dead for 3 days. They've heard that the tomb is empty. It doesn't appear that they've heard any resurrection eyewitness accounts yet, just that the tomb is empty. And they are taking a walk, about a 7-mile walk, contemplating everything that has been taking place. So let's read it together and then we'll look at this text as we remember Jesus. Luke chapter 24 and verse 13. It's a lengthy reading, but it's very important that we read directly from God's word on this. Now behold, 2 of them were traveling that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they talked together of all these things which had happened. So it was, while they conversed and reasoned, that Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were restrained, so they did not know him. And he said to them, "What kind of conversation is this that you guys are having with one another as you walk, and you're sad?" Then one of them, whose name was Clopas, answered and said to him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? And have you not known the things which happened there in these days?" And he said to them, "Well, what things?" So they said to him, "The things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priest and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, today is the 3rd day since these things happened. Yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us when they did not find his body. They came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said to them that he is alive. And certain of those who were with us went to the tomb, and we found it just as the woman said. But him they did not see." So take a break there just to understand they heard the account the tomb was empty, but as of yet they have not heard any eyewitness testimony that somebody has actually seen the risen Lord. All they know now is the tomb was empty. The apostles verified, this is Peter and John as they go to the tomb, they verify that the tomb is empty, but there's no indication that they know where Jesus is. They might still be contemplating like the women did, like Mary did, that they have taken his body. They've done something with it. They're just not sure. They're lost in how all this is taking place. And then verse 25, they said that he said to them, "O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?" And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Then they drew near to the village where they were going, and he indicated that he would have gone farther. And they constrained him, saying, "Abide with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is far spent." And he went in to stay with them. Now it came to pass, as they sat at the table with them, that he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they knew him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to one another, "Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us on the road, and while he opened the scriptures to us?" So they rose up that very hour. Now remember, they said it was late, you need to stay here. But now they're rising up that very hour. And they returned to Jerusalem and found the 11 and those who were with them gathered together. And we have indication of another resurrection appearance that we have no information about, because they are saying, that are gathered together saying, he's also appeared to Simon. So somewhere in all of this, it appears that Jesus appears to Simon, and Paul does mention that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that he appears to Peter separately on some occasion. It has to be before this. Verse 35, and they told about all the things that had happened on the road and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. So let's spend a few moments looking at this and all the things Jesus was able to accomplish on this little appearance on this particular occasion. First of all, they needed to listen to him before they recognized him. Could you imagine that? What would have happened if these two guys are walking, they're talking about all this stuff, and all of a sudden Jesus appears to them and they know exactly who he is? What is that going to do to the logical part of their body, their mind? I think it's going to put it in off whack, isn't it? Wouldn't me? I mean, they would be so emotionally overwhelmed with the fact that they are seeing the risen Lord that their mind may have shut off to reason. I have to be honest, mine probably would have. I would have wanted to do what Mary did, wanted to do what the ladies did, fall at his feet, worship him. But that's not what they needed. They needed what he was going to deliver to them without knowing who he was. And so on that walk, Jesus was able to open up the scriptures to them and have a logical discussion about how the Christ was always supposed to suffer and rise again. So now all that is being processed mentally, and they're able to go out after he does ascend to his Father and is gone from this earth permanently. They're able to have that same reasoning ability with other people. Now, they heard it directly from the Lord. So yeah, now I remember, because my mind was focused on everything that Jesus said. That doesn't happen if he lets himself be known to them at the very beginning. Does that make sense? So we see at this moment, Jesus knows what they need and handles it perfectly on that occasion. Then they needed the question, what are you talking about and why are you so sad? Jesus is our great physician, right? What if you went into a physician's office and he just diagnosed something? Just didn't ask you any questions. Just looked at you and said, well, this is what you need. Who's getting up and leaving? We'd be getting up and leaving. So what they needed to do is they needed to explain to him why they were so sad. And he needed to listen to that. They needed to feel heard in that moment and be able to release all of the emotional frustration and stress that they were feeling at that particular time. And so Jesus asked them in Luke 24 verse 17, what kind of conversation is this that you are having with one another as you walk and are sad? Now just notice this also. Jesus recognized that they were sad in this conversation. Before anything else, he recognized they were sad. Jesus knows when you're sad. You don't have to tell him. He knows, but he wants you to tell him, right? He wants to hear from you why you're feeling so sad. He wants to hear from you why you're discouraged. He wants you to tell him that you're tired and that you're worn out and that you need something from him. And so that he gives them a chance to tell their story to him. Look, if you go read it, when we pass the trade, you read it again. They tell him all their hopes. They're able to tell him, without knowing it's him, everything they believe about him. He was a prophet mighty in Scripture. And that's something that they need him to know without knowing that he's there. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That's a very powerful point. They needed his gentle rebuke. Now, what did Mary need? Mary needed to hear Jesus say her name. These guys needed to be woken up a little bit. Why don't you understand this stuff yet? They didn't need to be lambasted, but they did need to know that there was something that was not right in their thinking. And so he gives them this gentle rebuke when he says, "O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe." So he corrects them. He gives them all the information that they need to have at that particular time. Another thing that I find very interesting here. Jesus knew that they needed to think that he was going to keep walking. What does that provide them? That provides them an opportunity to invite him in. They need to know, they needed in that moment to think Jesus was going on ahead and to say, well, wait a minute, come in with us. And I think sometimes this meal, for some of us, in some weeks, probably all of us in some weeks, it's our chance to re-invite Jesus in. It's our chance to say, I believe Jesus. I believe that you died for me. And I need your help this week. I can't handle it on my own. I'm inviting you to be part of my life. It's not a one-time invitation once we're baptized. It's a continual invitation to want to be in the presence of Jesus on a regular basis. And that's I think, very healthy for us to verbalize, either really verbalize or verbalize in our minds, I'm inviting you into my life again today, Lord. They needed to invite Jesus. We need to invite Jesus sometimes. And think about that. Have you ever crossed this and said, why did Jesus do that? Why did he do that? Why did he knew he was going to stay. He knew he was going to stay. He knew where this was going to lead. And yet, he kept walking. Because they needed to say, well, wait a minute. I'm inviting you into our house to eat with us and to stay with us. Fascinating. They needed his undivided attention. Think about this. These two men, it's got a 7-mile walk with the Lord. How many of you would like to walk 7 miles with Jesus and let him explain the scriptures to you and tell you everything about himself and what he did? That's pretty powerful, because Jesus is going to need them too. What is Jesus going to need them for? To go out and have this same conversation with everybody they can for the rest of their life. And so they needed his undivided attention in that moment. And you know, that's sort of the purpose sometimes of going on a walk with someone, isn't it? To get away from all the other things that are happening in life and just focusing on the person that you're taking that walk with. So Shelley and I walk together sometimes. Sometimes we don't walk together, because sometimes I need to focus on something else when I walk, and sometimes she needs to focus on something else when she walks. And I'll have to be honest with you right now, and this is probably the first time this has happened in our 31 years of marriage. She's actually walking faster than me right now. And so it's a little bit more difficult for me to keep up with her. But sometimes, and that's what they needed in that moment. They needed this nice, quiet, undivided attention of Jesus, and for him to explain this particular stuff to him. Then they needed the breaking of the bread. They needed that moment where he broke the bread, and then it was the perfect time for the veil to be lifted and for them to know exactly who he was. We may not always like God's timing, but God's timing is always right. And so Jesus knew exactly when it was time for the veil to be lifted and for them to know exactly who he was. He knew exactly the occasion, the breaking of the bread. And we don't know how this worked, whether they saw his hands, whether the Lord just removed that from them, whether it just reminded them of the breaking of the bread in the past, which also adds to this. In order for this moment to be this effective, what had to happen prior to his death? He had to be They had to be at breaking bread with him at some point other than this. And so all those meals that Jesus had with people prior to the resurrection, we're going to see they come back to have special meeting after the resurrection. As a matter of fact, this same phrase is used in Acts chapter 2 twice, the breaking of the bread. It was a huge part of the apostles' fellowship together. Not only breaking of the bread from house to house, eating together regular meals, but also breaking the bread together every first day of the week. It's an important part of what we do. And then they needed him to vanish. They may not have known they needed him to vanish. They may have preferred that he stay and walk back to Jerusalem with them. But what did they need? They needed him to leave so they could do what? They could process all this. And they could get up, they could take that walk back to Jerusalem themselves, and they could become eyewitnesses that go to the apostles and tell the apostles, we've actually not seen the empty grave, we've seen the risen Lord. And at that moment, it was the time for them to hear the eyewitness testimony of Peter, that he also appeared to Peter. So today, as we take this Lord's Supper together, and as we think about Jesus for the next few minutes as the trays are being passed, I want you to think, what do I need in this moment as I remember Jesus? And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that Jesus will provide it, because some of us need encouragement. Some of us need to hear Jesus say our name. Some of us may need a gentle rebuke in this moment and say, hey, Dwayne, you're out of sorts. You're not living right. You forgot about me all week. You need to get back to what's important. So whatever you need in this moment, Jesus has the power to provide it to you, and I know that he will.